How's everyone going here? Welcome back to another camera comparison video. Today we've got the Samsung Galaxy S21 up against the iPhone 12 Pro Max. I'm sure some of you are thinking, why am I not comparing the S21 Ultra to the 12 Pro Max? That would be the very best of Samsung up against the very best of Apple. And I've actually already done that comparison, so I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and check that out a little bit later. But I actually think this would be a very good comparison. They both have 12 megapixel main and ultra wide sensors at the same focal length, and they each have telephoto cameras, and some would say on paper that the S21 even has the better telephoto lens. So if you're new to the channel and new to my camera comparisons, I like to show you a bunch of photos and videos in both good and low light conditions to give you an idea of which of these two camera systems might be best for your needs. So go ahead and check out all the photos and videos, and at the end, be sure to leave a comment and let me know which of these two phones you think did better, which one would you prefer, and let's continue our conversation down there. So let's go ahead and get to the photos and videos. Everyone, so here we go in the park testing out the video on the Galaxy S21 and the iPhone 12 Pro Max. I'm starting out in the ultra wide angle lens to give you a sense of what that field of view looks like on each and how they compare here on both of these ultra wide angle cameras on these phones. So I'll just pan around so you can get a sense for the field of view and how each of these ultra wide angles cameras compare here. And what's good about each of these cameras is that you can actually switch between the lenses while recording. So let's go to the main lens on the S21 and let's go to the main lens here on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. And so I'll do the same thing. I'll pan around a little bit so you can get a sense for what each of these cameras look like here on both phones and how they compare. And I'll go ahead and pan over here to the right and we'll test the zoom out on that cell tower. So I can go to a 3x telephoto there on the S21, 2.5x telephoto on the iPhone, and let's go zoom in all the way to 12x digital on the S21 and move into a full 7x digital there on the iPhone. And so both are looking pretty steady and clear. And I'll go ahead and back out to the main lens on each. And let's go ahead and test autofocus here on the post first with the Galaxy S21. Really nice and snappy there. Focus and refocus working really well here on the S21. And on the iPhone 12 Pro Max, same deal. Really nice and fast focus and refocus away. So let's go ahead and test stabilization by walking down the stairs here and through this path. And so both should be doing pretty well here as far as stabilization in 1080p. We'll pull up here and pan up into the sky so you can see how each of these cameras handle that change in exposure for the afternoon sunlight. Everyone, so here we go with the same test again in the park, this time at 4K 30 frames per second. Again, starting out with the ultra wide angle lens on each. And again, I'll go ahead and pan around here so you can see what this looks like here on the ultra wide angle lenses in 4K from both phones. And I'll go ahead and change into the main lens here on the S21 and on the iPhone. So now we're in the main wide angle lens here on each of these phones. And this is what that looks like here. And I'll go ahead and pan over here to the right. And again, we'll test zoom here in 4K on that cell tower. So we'll tap into 3x telephoto on the S21, 2.5x telephoto there on the iPhone. And again, we'll push into 12x max digital there on the S21 and max 7x digital there on the iPhone. And if my voice is getting lower on the S21, that's because it has that zoom audio going. So the farther I zoom, the more it's going to focus in on that subject that I'm zooming into. So my voice won't be as loud here. So I'll go ahead and back out to the main lens on each. And we'll test out autofocus again in 4K here on the post with the S21 first. Still nice and snappy autofocus and refocus away with a pretty nice bokeh or depth of field there. And we'll go ahead and try the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and as you expect, really quick autofocus here in 4K and refocus away. Also nice shallow depth of field there from the iPhone. And so let's go ahead and test stabilization again, this time in 4K. And again, the stabilization should be doing pretty well here on both. They're fully stabilized up to 4K. But do let me know if you see any differences. And I'll pull up here again and pan up into the afternoon sky to see how that looks into this changing light.
That sound, I got that heat, let's go.
Everyone, so here's some front-facing video from the Galaxy S21 and iPhone 12 Pro Max. This is at 1080p, 30 frames per second, and obviously I'm outdoors in some afternoon sunlight, but it's a bit cloudy, a little bit overcast. The sun's kind of peeking through just a little bit, but I'll go ahead and pan around this way where the sun is supposed to be, but you can kind of see some of the clouds over there. So you can check out what the video quality looks like in that kind of a situation. And I'll pan around slowly so you can kind of see what the video looks like here into some of the changing light conditions as the sun is now more directly in front of me, peeking through those clouds. And I'll go ahead and walk to test stabilization to give you an idea of what that looks like here on each of these front-facing cameras. Hey everyone, so here's some front-facing video from the Galaxy S21 and the iPhone 12 Pro Max. This is 4K 30 frames per second, and I'm in some afternoon sunshine, sort of. There's a bit of cloud cover. The sun's starting to peek out a little bit. So obviously I'm in a direction where the sun's not really presenting much of a problem here. So this is some fairly good lighting conditions here. And as I turn around this way, the sun is starting to peek out behind me, so I can see what that does to the overall picture quality here. And I'll turn and pan around this way so I can see what it looks like in some of the changing lighting conditions with the sun now directly in front of me. I'll start walking to test stabilization as well, so I can see what that looks like here between the two front-facing cameras. But do let me know what you think of the front-facing cameras on the Galaxy S21 and the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Hey friends, so here's some video from the rear-facing cameras and some low light, starting out with the ultra-wide-angle lens on each phone, so you can see and compare the field of view. How much can you fit into the frame with each of these cameras here? And so if I look into the viewfinder, the iPhone is a bit darker, and so the iPhone ultra-wide-angle camera is not too great compared to other phones and tends to be not as great in low light, but it's good at least for photos that they have night mode. But you can really see that here in the picture quality right now. As I pan up into that bright light, we'll go ahead and shift into the main lens on each. So here we go with the S21 and main lens on the iPhone. So we can compare what that looks like here on each phone. And I'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit here. So let's go ahead and try the telephoto lenses on each. So that's the S21. And let's go to 2.5 times on the iPhone. So here are the telephoto lenses in low light on each of these phones. And we'll go ahead and back them out to the main lens. And we'll go ahead and pan over this way and start walking to test stabilization here at 1080p and some low light. And so we'll be walking over into a darker area. So this is the usual low light test that I do. I like to see how these phones handle that fairly well lit area and then how they transition into a much darker light here as you round the corner. And again, at least in the viewfinder, the S21 is brighter, but at the expense of a good amount of noise as far as what I can see. The iPhone, a little bit more true to what I'm seeing here with my own eyes, at least in the viewfinder. And I'll go ahead and pull up here and pan up into the night sky. So it's pretty dark out here, and again, S21, lots of noise trying to brighten up that sky. And I'll pan over here to the left where there's a little bit more light, so you can see what that looks like here in 1080p on both phones. Everyone, so we're back with the same test, this time in 4K 30 frames per second. Again, starting out with the ultra wide angle lens on each. And 4K footage will tend to be a little bit darker than the 1080p footage you just saw. So pay attention to that and let me know what you think. But again, the iPhone is darker, at least in the viewfinder, than the S21. And that generally tends to be the case with iPhone ultra wide angle cameras. And we'll go ahead and move over into the main lens here on each. So let's see if we can get into the main lens on the S21 and on the iPhone. So that is now the main lens on each and what that looks like here. The pan over to the right, you can see how that looks into that really bright street light. The S21 is flaring that out a little bit more than the iPhone, I think. But it is a very intense light. And we'll go ahead and again test the telephoto lens here in 4K. So that's the iPhone. And then let's go to telephoto on the S21. So let's go ahead and then back this out into the main lens. iPhone, S21, and then let's go ahead and pan over this way and test some stabilization here in 4K. So again, testing out how it handles really fairly bright and well lit light here over to a much darker area. Also pay attention to any kind of micro jitters you might see. That tends to happen in low light, even though these are both fully stabilized here. So as you're around the corner again, it gets darker, and again the iPhone is much darker, the S21 is brighter, but again a decent amount of noise to achieve that. And let's go ahead and pan up into the dark night sky. You can see the twinkle of a couple of stars maybe. We won't get too many out here with all this light pollution, but again the S21's quite a bit of noise trying to brighten up that night sky. And pan over here to the left where there's a little more light, and you can see what that looks like here in 4K. Hey everyone, so here's some video from the front-facing camera at night from the Galaxy S21 and the iPhone 12 Pro Max. I'm in my usual testing spot here where we've got a decent amount of light to start out with. You can see the bright street lights behind me and what that looks like directly into the lens there. And I'll go ahead and start walking so I can test stabilization here. And as I usually do, I'm going to start walking into a bit of a darker area so you can see how these front-facing cameras not only handle the stabilization but also the transition from this fairly well-lit area to a much darker area. I'll also be walking by a fountain so we can hear what the sound of that does as far as audio is concerned, and if you can still hear that against my voice. And so here it is a little bit darker in this spot here, and I'll pan around and there's much brighter streetlights behind me, so you can see what that looks like here into each of the front facing cameras. At least in the viewfinder, the iPhone's looking a bit darker here. And I'll turn around and back up here, and we'll end this video here in this little bit darker scene so you can see a direct comparison between these two front-facing cameras here in 1080p. Everyone, so we're back again with the same test, this time at 4K 30 frames per second. Again, starting out in this pretty well-lit area so you can see what that looks like here into each of these front-facing cameras. And I'll go ahead and start walking to test stabilization in 4K. And once again, we'll be walking from this fairly well-lit area over to a much darker area so we can see how it handles the light transition in 4K. And this should be looking a bit darker. 4K tends to look darker than 1080p, so pay attention to that and what you think against the 1080p footage you just saw. So let's go ahead and pull up here again. We'll pan around and we'll check out those really bright lights behind me again. And again, the iPhone, at least in the viewfinder, is looking a bit darker than the S21, but we'll end here in this darker area again, and I think we'll close out the video right here. So just let me know what you think about each of these cameras. Now that you've seen all the photos and videos, leave a comment down below. Let me know which one you thought did better, which one did you prefer, and let's continue our conversation down there. And as always, thanks for watching.